Elaine Chao, former U.S. Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Transportation, visited Houston on April 23rd to meet with community leaders and public representatives to discuss the progress of the proposed National Museum of Asian Pacific American History. As one of the few Asian American women to have served in 2 presidential cabinets, Secretary Chao has played a significant role in national public service, while continuing to advocate for the recognition and the contributions of Asian American communities across the United States. During her visit, she shared updates on the museum initiative, a national effort aimed at preserving Asian American history and ensuring this story become part of the broader American narrative. She also spoke about a generational shift within the Asian American community from adoption to participation, as the new generation steps forward to engage more actively in public life and help shape the future of American society. Her visit to Houston represents more than a community gathering. It marks an important step in strengthening historical recognition, cultural identity, and civic participation for Asian Americans nationwide. Today, we take you inside Secretary Elaine Chao's visit to Houston. 赵小兰，美国前劳工部部长、交通部长，4月23日到访休斯顿，与当地政商界及社区代表进行交流国家亚太裔历史博物馆项目的推进。作为美国历史上少数先后进入2届总统内阁的亚裔女性领导者之一，赵小兰长期参与国家层面的公共事务，也为之推动亚裔群体在美国社会中的可见度与影响力。此次访问期间，他介绍了国家亚太历史博物馆项目的最新进展。这一国家级文化倡议不仅是对亚裔历史的系统记录，更是在推动亚裔故事成为美国国家叙事的重要组成部分。他还谈到，新一代亚裔正在从过去的融入社会，逐渐走向更加主动的参与公共事务，在政策、教育、商业与文化等多个领域发挥越来越重要的作用。赵小兰部长此次休斯顿之行，不仅是一场社区层面的交流，也是一段关于历史身份与未来的重要对话。接下来，让我们一起走进赵小兰部长此次休斯顿之行的现场。
When we talk about the workforce, we have to talk about AI. And I know that there must be people in this room whose children are concerned about AI. And I should not say too much because I am not an expert. We have experts here who can speak much more cogently about AI. Speaking from a policy point of view, we're going to call on you next. I think it's very natural to feel anxiety and also vulnerability when dealing with AI. People are wondering whether they'll have jobs. I'm an optimist. I've seen and have been a student of history. I think with every new wave, there are new opportunities. What we need to be concerned about, as a society, is what happens to those people who cannot make the transition. So if you're young, some of you have children, your children and you may be concerned about what occupations your children should go into. But they have something on their side. They have time. They will learn, they will adapt, and they're going to be okay. But for people who are older, I think that is the greatest challenge. And how does the government and how does the business community help them? So I think we need to focus on continuous learning. Continuous learning is always important. And then also to not be afraid and to, as somebody said recently, just lean into it. But for government, I think we will have to provide some kind of transition program. But if the government does provide transition programs for those unable to transition successfully to the new era of AI, we have to make sure these new programs, support programs, give the right incentives to encourage people to go back into the workforce and not prevent them from
batting 1,000. You're really good. So, what one issue do you believe deserves more public debate than it's currently given? What one thing needs to be debated more today?
You know, we are such a cacophonous society. I mean, for Asian Americans, we don't like conflict. Moduan, which is a Chinese word for contradiction, it's bad, bad, bad. We want harmony, we want order. So culturally, there's a big difference. And for many of us who want to make into the transition into mainstream society, we have to understand the cultural differences. So as much as people think that I'm establishment, I'm actually not. I still think a lot from the Asian perspective. So I don't talk very much, usually. I know I'm here, so I have to talk. Generally speaking, I don't talk that much because I still have the Asian concept that I want to learn, I want to listen. But then some Western, non-Asian people would say, you're not contributing. You're not giving your fair share of your knowledge. And so they think it's bad. So there are these cultural gaps, which I think make some of our transitions more difficult. Also, for those our friends who are non-Asian, Western society and culture is really confrontational, energetic, and it's about 90% output, 10% input. So for Asian Americans and Asians, we're like 90% input, 10% output. So sometimes we can't have a conversation. And I'll give you an early example from my career. I'm very Americanized, I've been educated in America, but I still think a lot like Asian. So when somebody speaks, I don't interrupt. And so the person just keeps on talking and talking. And then I finally figured it out. He's talking because I'm not interrupting. So, you know, we have to kind of understand the speech patterns as well. So one of the things that we perhaps don't discuss as much pertaining to this community are the cultural differences. And I am a heartfelt, fervent believer that we have a great deal to teach America. So my father said, when we came to America, we came to learn. And then about 30 years later, he said, as America becomes more diverse and as more Western, non-Asian Americans begin to be interested in diversity and in other cultures, he says we can now teach. And in an international trade center like this, you're dealing with international businesses, economics. We need to have greater understanding of international economics, dynamics, politics, geopolitical occurrences. So what better community to share the knowledge with this community who knows so much about Asia, Korea, Vietnam, Japan, so many others. I'm sure there are people from Burma as well, and many, many others, and Malaysia, Philippines. And you have people in this community who speak multiple Asian languages. So there's so much wealth here. I'm very grateful to have a father and a mother who always said to their 6 daughters, yes, there are 6 daughters in the family. Wait till I tell you stories about that. But my parents always said, be proud of your cultural heritage. You are Chinese in birth and heritage. You're American. You have a responsibility and the opportunity to combine the best of both worlds. So they were very positive, very optimistic people. And we were always taught to be proud of our culture. And so consequently, we never suffered any identity crisis like some of these Asian young people, because we're both. We're of the East and we're of the West. And we can be bridges of understanding and we can be exemplified, the best of both cultures. I mean, that's very empowering. We didn't view that as a burden, but rather, it was an opportunity. We had something special to share with mainstream America. That gave us empowerment. I also cannot, you didn't ask the question, but I have to say, I cannot start any story about me without talking about my parents. And this is a basic Asian trait. When I talk about how grateful I am to my parents who came here, who sacrificed, every Asian young person even understands instinctively what I'm talking about and the same feeling and emotions. So, people may think that my family is wealthy. We're actually not. My father and we came up the hard way. And that's why I know how to do so many things. Like, Mr. Wea Lee is wonderful. I was in the car with Shelley Dean. Shelley's here, we want to thank her as well. Mr. Wea Lee is like very personally involved. I mean, he's not like a CEO that's like a non-Asian CEO that's kind of like hands off and delegate, never check on anything. No, he called like twice within 20 minutes. So where are you? Is you going to get here like in 12:30 or like? I think that's wonderful. So when I was growing up, I was taught practical life skills. For example, when we go on a vacation, which we never went on a vacation until I was 16 years old because we couldn't afford it. But when I was 16, I had other sisters. We were taught and told to buy the airline tickets, the most inexpensive ones, of course. It's not just buy the tickets. No. You gotta scour all the travel agents at that time, find the least expensive for like 8 people. And then we had to book the hotel, a good hotel, quality hotel, but inexpensive. And then we would also be tasked with coming up with a daily itinerary. Even if we were going to the Caribbean, we could not lie on the beach. No way. We had to go and learn about the island. Have you been to Aruba? There's not much there, but we saw every single homemade stand there was on that island. And we traveled all the roads, well, the one road that's in Aruba. And so we learned a lot about practical life skills, how to be helpful. And then we worked as a team. So every morning before breakfast, my parents are still sleeping, we would rush down to the beach and we would grab 8 chaise lounges before the crowd came. We would put our blankets, our towels on them, and then we would put our books to make sure that everybody knew that they were being occupied. What that taught was teamwork. And one of us would run down, one of us would hold the elevator, one of us would go inside and get everything ready. So it was teamwork. And I found that these kinds of exercises were wonderful. So my father was constantly, my mother too, teaching us and training us from a very young age. So our husbands are the beneficiaries, like we are children. And my husband clearly says that he would not have gotten to where he is without me. Of course, when he says it, I of course say, oh no, it's you. But before you, I can say, yeah, it was me. So I think there's so much that we can appreciate within our own culture. And the Chinese parents are unbelievable in their devotion to their children. Chinese parents would do everything and anything to get their children a good education, a secure and loving environment, and the opportunity to get ahead in life. But you will never hear them say, I love you. My parents never said, I love you, until they became quite assimilated in America. And it was like maybe 50 years later, and my mother would say, I love you. too. They show their love by their actions. And I hope that Chinese young people, Asian young people, understand that about our culture. So with my father, I would just say, my father came from a small farming village outside of Jiading. How many of you know Jiading outside of China? His village was so remote. When he went to visit his village in 1972, after Henry Kissinger visited and President Nixon visited, the government had to create a road into his village. It was very poor. He only got ahead because of education. And he earned scholarship after scholarship to be able to go to elementary school, middle school, high school. His father was a school principal, but they were basically subsistence farmers. So it's just amazing to think about how my father had the gumption, the ambition to do what he did. And if you listen to my father today, his English is terrible. Terrible. Very, very heavily accented. And his Chinese is accented. Because he's from Jiading, Xiangxia. So he has a Chinese, country, rural, bumpkin accent in Chinese. So the Chinese even looked down upon him when we first came to America. But he has such positive thinking, such innovative spirit. He's a joyful person. He gets up today, he's in his 90s, with a grateful heart, cheerful disposition, and gratitude to the Lord for all that we have been given. And and he said, he decided in China, there's no private geniture, so the land is divided. And he had 4 cousins, and he didn't want to fight the land with them. So he decided to go to sea. And then he went to, that's how he got into Jiaotong University in Shanghai. He was a star athlete, a very good, obviously, scholar, student. And in 1949, when the revolution, the Chinese Civil War was at its height, he went on a ship to finish his credentials in Shanghai Jiaotong University. While the ship was at sea, the government fell. Or it depends on what your ideology is. So this is, language is important. And it's important in Washington today as well. So if you were a communist, that means Shanghai was liberated. If you were a nationalist, Shanghai fell. So my father was on the ship, and it set sail for Taiwan because the communists were incredibly effective in closing down everything and shutting the ports. So the ship could not continue, and it went to Taiwan. And at that time, Taiwan was just a small farming, small fishing island, and 1.5 million people descended on it over an 18-month period. There was a lack of food, shelter, jobs. And my father landed 21 years old, not knowing a soul. And we have wonderful pictures of him during this time. He was optimistic, he was smiling. And this is a young man who's just lost his country. But he didn't doubt that he was going to be okay. And he started anew. Met my mother, got married, became the youngest sea captain at the age of 29. But he wanted to do better. So he took a national examination, 4 days, scored #1, and broke all the records. And in China, that's hundreds of years of records. And with that, he got an opportunity to come to America. My mother was 7 months pregnant with their 3rd child. But she said, go to America and seek better opportunities. It took him 3 years before he was able to bring my mother, his 3 daughters, to America. And I was 8 years old. Our first home was a small 1-bedroom apartment in Queens, New York. It was not a very good neighborhood, but we never, ever doubted that our lives in America would be better. So my father and my mother had incredible resilience, determination, ambition. Not ambition, because ambition is a bad word in Chinese culture. It means, actually, the actual translation of ambition in Chinese is wild heart. Not good. So my parents, they didn't have this huge ambition. They just wanted to do better. Just a little bit better. Get a bigger apartment next time, 2 bedrooms. No, maybe move to a house. So they had very modest goals. And my father, to this day, my mother passed away in 2007, they still live an incredibly modest lifestyle. He lives in the same house he lived in 1974, and we are very blessed. You may have heard that my father has done very well. He has an international shipping company that's now world-renowned, but we're not going to get it. So he says, we made our best investment for the children by giving you an education. They also said, happiness comes not from us giving you anything, except your education. Happiness comes when you take that education and you do something worthwhile with it on your own merit and your own effort. That is the way you will be happy. And so the bulk of my father's fortune will go to charity. And we all know that. And we're okay, because first of all, it's not our money, but also it's a wonderful example. So my father has always said, society gave us so much, we have an obligation to give back to society. And so that's why I became friends with Mr. Wea Lee and Mr. Larry Wong and also Mr. Park, because they have the same kind of, you and I have not yet met, so we will soon meet. They have the same kind of devotion and commitment to the community, as I'm sure many of you are here as well. So we have wonderful examples. Asian Americans are on the rise. We have so much to share with mainstream America. Have confidence and have hope and also have joy. Thank you.
All right, great story. I guess I have one more question, and that is, reflecting on your career, what do you feel like the one thing you did had the greatest impact, and what do you feel like is still unfinished?
COVID. COVID was a huge challenge because it basically shut down the whole supply chain. So my job was to keep the airplanes running because there were still emergency flights, medical emergencies that needed to occur. I needed to keep the trains running because they supplied 30% of the trade, the goods in this country. And then trucks, 70% of the trucks carry, trucks carry 70% of the needs. And so my job is to go into a grocery store and make sure that the shelves are loaded. Because people were, we were all restricted at home. We would come out for groceries. That was the only exception. And so we did all sorts of things. And I can go into lots of detail. But the FAA, they used to come and go. We now put them in one team. You all came at one time, you all left at one time. If any one of you got sick with COVID, the whole team goes out. And we had redundancy. We had redundancy, in other towers. And then with truck drivers, their problem was New York City had a 2-week, COVID moratorium. You come in, you don't leave for 2 weeks. Well, that doesn't work. And lots of other cities had the same thing. So we had touchless. We actually pioneered touchless bills of lading so that trucks can come in, masked, everything was electronic and then out so that trade can continue. Can I tell another story?
Sure.
I have one. you all to have hope. I know that life has difficulties. It just is. And so we all have our disappointments. And so I want to tell you, I nearly didn't get into the cabinet. When I was Secretary of Labor, I was the number 2 choice. I wasn't the first choice. And I was Deputy Secretary. Everybody expected me to be the Secretary under President George W. Bush. I wanted to be in the cabinet, not for me. I didn't really care. I wanted to do it for my parents, who sacrificed so much. And I wanted to do it for our community, because I wanted to make sure that people knew that there could be an Asian American in the cabinet. And so there was lots of newspaper talk about how I would be the next, cabinet, and most likely Secretary of Transportation, because that was my specialty. So I go for the interview, everything is fine, and then I don't hear. And so I asked my husband over Christmas and New Year's, do you think the president lost my telephone number? And then on January 3rd, I see Norm Mineta come out of the president-elect's governor's mansion in Texas, in Austin. And it was announced that he was Transportation Secretary. And all the other posts have all been filled. So I am like out on the streets with like nothing. I was incredibly disappointed for our community and for my parents. So I could have acted in certain ways. I could have been angry, let other people know I was angry, because I worked so hard to get here, and I didn't get it. Or I can be gracious. And so my parents' teaching came to me once more. They said, whatever happens in life, never let people know that you are something, provide inspiration to others. And so, Andy Carr, the chief of staff, who used to be president of Texas A&M, gave me a call and he said, we're really sorry. We were gonna give you Secretary of Transportation, but Norm Mineta wanted Secretary of Transportation. We wanted a Democrat in the cabinet, and Norm was supposed to get energy, but he didn't want energy, he wanted transportation. This is how life works. So he says, do you want anything else? We'll give you ambassador. Do you want an ambassadorship? We'll give you whatever you want. And so I said, like I was gonna cry, but I didn't. And I said, no, that's okay. I'll help you on the outside. It was an honor to have been considered. Like, when you're a runner-up at the Academy Awards, this is what you say. It was an honor to be considered. So I was very disappointed. And so he says, well, thank you so much for everything you did for the president, the Bushes, everything. And so guess what happens? Literally, like less than 2 weeks later, the Secretary of Labor drops out because she hired an illegal alien. And if you're the Secretary of Transportation, you're in charge of all the labor laws regarding legal versus illegal migration. And so she dropped out. And so the administration needed somebody quick. They needed to show momentum that the dropping out of this former Secretary of Labor nominee did not slow down the momentum of the Bush administration. So they looked around. Who can they get that's going to get confirmed, has been vetted already, has a clean record, and is ready to go? Elaine Chao. So I get this phone call, literally at 10 o'clock in the morning. And it's Andy Card. And he says, are you ready? And I said, hi, Andy, how are you? He was very formal. He just said, please hold on, the president-elect is on the phone. So President Bush calls me up on the phone, talks to me, he says, are you interested in being Secretary of Labor? And I said, yes. And so he said, okay, put your best dress on, get your hair done, put your makeup on. We're gonna have a press conference at 1 o'clock. See you there. Click. That was it. So right away I call my parents, not even my husband. I call my parents. Then I call my husband. But I I wanted to thank my parents for their decades-long love and care for the family. And they never complained, but they suffered a great deal for the children. And we are because of them. I'm speaking so much about myself because I'm trying to convey to you that your stories have so much power. Mr. Park is Korean American. His story is amazing. Mr. Larry Wong and also Mr. Wea Lee, the American success stories, so many others. Ken, how are you? I just realized he was there. All of us, our stories are what makes America great. So don't be shy about telling about your own story. It's part of America's story, which is why we've got to work on this National Museum on the National Mall. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've got
Wonderful story. Thank you. Thank you. It's a great job. All of us come over here as looking for opportunity. I mean, in the last couple of years, Asian American really suffered a lot because a lot of reasons. So I still looking for. Look at this facility. In the last 25 years, we served 15,000 small businesses, right? This is some of the things we do for our society. So I'd like to have advice for all of us, what we should do in the future.
I don't think you need advice from me. All of you have great ideas. All of you have wonderful, empowering, powerful stories. Your task is to let America know about you. And when you think that way, you're giving a gift to America. You're not asking America for anything. You're giving them a gift. This is how I was able to raise $3.2 billion for United Way. I never thought I was begging people for money. No. I was giving them an opportunity to participate in something worthwhile and purposeful. And that's what you're doing. Mr. Wea Lee's story. You know, we're giving them a wonderful opportunity to learn, to grow, to become better people, better Americans. We're giving them a gift. They're lucky. Yeah. And each of you will have different ideas on what to do. And so to clarify, each of you will have different ideas. You just do it. You just go ahead. And in each of your ways, you will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.